We're here to help you be a great student. You probably speak English since you're watching a video in English. But do you want to be monolingual all your life, or do you hope to be bilingual, or trilingual, or even quadrilingual? I love learning new languages. It opens so much of the world. I speak English, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, so I have some experience that I can share with you. How do you get good at speaking another language? If you chosen second language is brand new to you, your first step will be to recognize. First, what's this let's put up a page in Wikipedia. They have nice feature where they can look at a subject in many different languages. What do you notice? Does it use the same alphabet as English? Can you tell the difference between related languages like French and Italian? Observe the different use of accent or special characters. Now, this next passage harder. What's this language sound like? International cinema is a great way to be exposed to new language realization. You may find that initially it just sounds like but eventually you recognize where sentences end, and then you can start to pick out individual words. You train your ear to know what to expect in your new language. You might feel most comfortable learning from the textbook, and that's perfectly fine. You do feel sense of satisfaction each time you finish a chapter. How do you pick a textbook? You could always go online and see what textbooks are using at school you admire. Ask advice from friends who have studied language before. They may even loan you some book. If you do get a textbook, try to find one that has extra material like audio recordings. The more ways you expose to the language, the better. But what's even more effective is making your own study materials. We recommend situational learning. Think about the situations you find yourself in and what you like to be able to say and understand in your new language. This adds a touch of personal motivation to be able to handle yourself in public. For instance, you're visiting Barcelona and you really want to host chocolate and churros. How do you ask for help picking a cafe, finding this map, catching a tram, ordering and paying when you are finished? This is a very specific scenario with typical sentences that use socialized vocabulary. I doubt you're going to find some this chapter in the textbook. But it's important to you to be able to handle this situation in your new language. Start here. Prepare for your scenario, referring to textbook or phrasebook, or even better, with the help of native speaker, write out a dialogue and a list of vocabulary. Practice with a friend, and of course, don't forget the power of broadcast. Having the confidence to be able to handle yourself in one scenario, that you move on to another and another. This scenario will give you an anchor to grab onto when you are in new situation. Now that you know how to buy a ticket for the tram, it will much be easier when you have to buy a ticket for the bus or train. If you know how to order in a cafe, it will be easier for you to learn how to buy things in the department store. Each scenario ties into many others. To make your language learning really robust, along with learning scenarios, you should also learn the basic rule of grammar. These will come more easily to you when you have set up 20-50 sentences you're already very familiar with. Notice how sentence constructions in your new language differ from English. Other words are in the same order, adjective, noun, verb, adverb, or other in inverted compared with what you are familiar with. The single noun, adjective. You can fall back on those sentences you already know very well from the scenario, and those will help you make sense of grammar rules. In this way, with focused study, you can learn a lot on your own. Of course, there's really no substitute for immersion, listening and speaking the language with native speaker with no English interruptions. For many years, depending on where you live, it was very hard to do this. Imagine trying to learn Spanish in, say, Minnesota or Stockholm. You have to look really hard to find someone to talk with. I actually moved to Italy and became fluent in Italian. And now, thankfully, you can do immersion online. You can join classes and talk to native speakers or without leaving your house. We recently learned about the Lingoda, an online language learning service, and we thought we give it a try. Lingoda lets you work with group classes or individual tutor where are native speakers. Group classes are a little less expensive and may be a good way to be easier to new language, as well as give you a chance to meet other people who you could practice with. You start at Lingoda with assessment tests to place you at the right level of instruction. And then you progress at your own speed, taking the lesson on your own schedule. You can start at an absolutely beginner and work your way up to fluency. You can even get certification that can help you with jobs. Now let me share with you some tips and tricks I learned to study language. Tip number 1. Work very hard on your pronunciation. Pronunciation first. Start by imitating what the language sounds like when you watch a foreign film. You may feel silly, but you have to master the sound of the new language. It may help to know there are a finite number used. For instance, the French phonetic alphabet contains 37 sounds. You can probably pronounce most of them just fine with practice. Usually people have trouble with just one or two of the sounds. For instance, in French R, in nothing like the English R, you have to hold the tongue completely differently. So when you see R written down, you can be confusing. Many beginning students pronounce it incorrectly and then they have to break that habit. It's better if you start pronouncing things properly as soon as possible. You can help to imitate voice English. This is not the rule or mean or anything like that. You're doing this to learn how they do make natural French sounds. Saying therefore, let you understand that th is not pronounced the same way in French as in English. Grammar is easier to learn if you understand the grammar of the old language. So check out our English grammar series. The more language you learn, you start to notice things that they all have in common. All languages have ways to express an accent, a verb. You can say whether something is happening now or in the future or in the past. All languages have a way of identifying the subject, who or what is doing the action. Next comes preparing that subject with pronoun. Luke went to the store. He went to the store. Soon you figure out that there isn't that much grammar to learn, and you can pick up a lot of it by practicing. Another thing you get more relaxed about once you learn more than one language is numbers. Each language has its own number system. Some will feel more comfortable for you because it's familiar to your native language. Others, well, you'll learn how to count by 20s and subtract 10 or whatever. You can do it. Build your vocabulary. This is the biggie. This is the part of learning a language that will take you to the longest. In fact, you might never be finished building your vocabulary. The trick is knowing where to start. It turns out, and the great majority of the time, you use a very small number of words. Linguists have analyzed the word frequency in English, French, or all the major languages. By learning the 100 most common words, you'll be able to understand 50 50% of the language. That's an incredible head start. Learn the 500 most common words and now you understand 67%. 1,000 words gets you to 75%. Buy a frequency dictionary and commit yourself to learn first the 100 most common word, then the 500 most common word, and then the 1,000 most common word. This will pay off rapidly. The best way to learn vocabulary with this flashcard is spaced repetition. Watch your video on flashcard to get some pointer and how to get them more efficiently. We suggest you focus on phrases that use your vocab term rather than individual words. This is much more powerful, both because it helps you to memorize or learn a word in context, and because phrases can be immediately used in the speaking and writing. A cheap little phrase book really comes in hand here. You may be surprised to find you already know many of the words in the new language. About 30% of English words are derived from French, 30% from Latin, and 30% from the Germanic languages. This isn't going to help you very much if you are learning, say, Russian or Japanese. However, one interesting side benefit from learning such a different language is that you acquire a new way to express an idea. For instance, the Japanese term wabi-sabi refers the beauty in the imperfection. There's no denying if you speak English, you can get by in many places. But to be true citizen in the world, you want to be able to say bonjour, konnichiwa, hola, guten tag, bonjour. Being able to make yourself understood is an important part of being a great student. Ciao.